I thought we'd talk about the Sicilian Dragon.
That's a
Now,
great idea.
and we're going to feature a game which is associated, what people associate with real dragon. We're back. We've branched off with all this anti-Sicilians, a bit of positional play on the
Hmm.
queen side, castle and king side, both sides, that sort of thing. But now we're getting back to tactics.
Yes, yes,
Short
yes.
and sweet, and a Yugoslav attack. You ready for action, Anna?
Please.
Right, so here's what we're going to do. So we have white putting the pawn in e4, and off we go with the Sicilian Dragon. No flashy deviances, just straight in with it, fianchetting that bishop. Bishop e3 by white, and we head straight over to the Yugoslav attack. None of this Dragadorfi leaving the king in the middle business. It's straight into castles, kingside, queen d2, and the move everybody loves to look at. 9 castles queenside, which you named the modern variation, I believe, unless you've changed it
By
since.
accident, I guess. Yeah. It's
By
d5,
accident.
right?
Yeah. So this is it. You're right. D5 and D5. This is the one. This is it. This is the main line. And this is what we're going to look at. Now, I just wanted to take a board. This is quite a short, sweet game. And I really, there's no way I could not have included this game in an update. I have to say that. But let's just stop here for a second and remind ourselves what's going on.
Okay.
So
Let's remind
essentially, in this
ourselves.
position, black has struck out in the center. So if all the pieces get swapped off, or things get swapped off in the middle, there's going to be 1 or 2 centralized white pieces that could be targeted. Quite simply, black is now threatening to take that pawn on e4, or to swap on d4, then to take on e4. So white needs to do something about that, sort of. We've done one little sideline where white can go king b1, and then it would be a disaster to take on e4, because after knight takes c6, black is actually losing a piece, because queen takes queen is not check, and there will be an intermezzo knight takes e7 check. In that instance, by the way, there's a couple of funny things. You might remember there was some funny line with knight takes knight, intending to take on e4 next go, and then white advances that pawn to e5. We have covered that in one of our little sessions, but we're not having that today. Also, we are having e takes d5, which is the main move. But what some people might say, well, why doesn't white swap off knights on c6 first? Well, I think the point is there's no, other than the system, where white now plans to play bishop h6, which is, of course, a system we have looked at. White, of course, can't move that bishop until the central situation had been resolved. But unless he's planning on doing that, there's no point in doing that and then taking on d5, because then, of course, he's absolutely committed to take this pawn anyway, really, because if black ends up with this nice central structure and those half-open B and C files to work with their rooks, that is absolutely delightful for black.
It is. Even the engine says so, as we also covered once. I don't know which episode it was. We've made 17 episodes so far, by the way.
17. Oh, my word.
this
That
beautiful?
is so much. Thank you, everybody, for following these. Of course, I don't tend to watch them myself because I've already been through them. It's nothing to do with not liking hearing myself talk, of course. But yeah, but thank you, everybody, for following. And we'll try and keep everybody happy over time. We're doing different things. And if there's anything of interest, I like to keep people happy. So we'll do the best we possibly can. Anna. Right. So here we go. D5. E takes d5. We know that. Knight takes d5. And you also know then we have this situation now. White has to do something about his attack bishop on e3. And we have knight takes knight on c6 first. If white was to take here on d5 first, which you don't look at, then black will take with the queen. And now that means this time around, black even has the option, of course, just to take this with their queen, which again would be very satisfactory for black. More than that, black's better here because the structure's lovely on the king side. There's a bit of pressure on the queen side. And of course, black doesn't even have the isolated queen side pawns, which is often associated with these situations for black. So we have knight takes here, and then knight takes c6, and then b takes c6. So this is it. Basically, decision time for white. Black has got the knight on d5 here, and of course, the main thing is this dragon bishop. It's cutting across the board like a knife that's cutting through
cucumber. Like a katana, to be in dragon terms, right?
Right. So it's cutting it along. Yeah. So there we go. So that's why in this position here, You will know only too well white either has to bite the bullet and take that pawn on win that pawn on d5 by swapping off knights and grabbing with the pawn with the queen, which we know black gets more than adequate compensation. I don't even need to go over it. No, everyone here knows it. They can check back at what we've done before and that little line where black sacrifices the rook in the corner. Or white can do the main line of bishop to d4, where basically their plan is to get those bishops off, hope to get the queens off, and say, look, you've got those weak pawns which I can try and pick off in the end game. Those are going to be Isolanes on the queen side. And it's true. If everything was just swapped off, then these pawns would be a little bit of a problem. But black is not going to lie down and allow that sort of thing to happen. And that's why after bishop to d4, well, black either plays e5 to keep those bishops on the board or swaps off the bishops and then, I was going to do more than I was going to do here. And then says queen b6, okay, you can have the queens off, but only on my terms, which involves swizzling those pawns back to how they'd rather be. But you know what, Anna? In this game, we see a completely different move for the first time ever on this YouTube.
My God, the excitement. I cannot handle it. What is it going to be? Please tell me.
Well, okay. And the fact is, lots of you will know I do the chess publishing every month on the Dragon, and I'd never even featured it before on that before. And this is the move knight e4 immediately, which basically is probably not a very good move upon reflection. But I thought it was quite good to cover this game.
Yes.
And the idea is, well, white's idea, this knight often ends up in the center of the board anyway, as you know, after the bishop d4, e5 line. So the advantage of this move is, yeah, it do out the c5 square, and it does prevent the black queen can't now currently come out to either b6 or a5 now, courtesy of the white queen on d2, covering a5. But of course, the bishop is doing its stuff. It's doing its stuff along the diagonal. Although maybe there's some deep plan to try and go bishop d4 and do things slightly different on white's terms. Anyway, it didn't really bother black. Black thought, well, you know what? I'm just going to activate my rook on the b file. Seems like a perfectly reasonable thing to do here.
Nice
and of course, immediately scrutinizing the b2 pawn. I'm certainly not worried about the a7 pawn at the moment with b2 hanging. Plus, rook a8 would always win a2 anyway, but that's kind of completely, totally irrelevant here. So now, let's just see. So if white played b3 now, oh my word, that would be whole city Arizona around here. Not the sort of thing you would like to see. And for example, at the very least, we could play bishop f5. And well, let's continue this little situation. g4 takes. Knight takes here, bishop, and after the queen takes back here, a simple bishop b2 check will be a kind of overloader, if you like, to win that rook on d1. Although
I like it.
I have to say probably queen a5 will be like pretty much crushing as well. So
many options to get.
Yeah, many options. I think white's not going to want to play that move b3. I think that's pretty clear. Those are undesirable holes. So instead, white played bishop d4. Fair enough. Absolutely. Why not? And black did swap off the bishops and now play queen c7, which is a typical sort of move in the main line, the analogous main lines as well. Only here, there's no pawn on e5. The queen's got a direct view of c7, of course. And the simple plan is to get the bishop out, pile the rooks on the d file to try and expose that centrally posted queen. So there's still a similarity at the moment, but it's not such a good idea, I think, compared to the normal main lines for white. And we're going to see just why. So white now continued h4. We know what he's dreaming of. Oh, yeah. Here. He wants to get a checkmate down on ha if he wants, if he can. That's what he'd like to do. But that's too slow. It's too slow. Probably he should settle now for just, I don't know, getting the bishop out or maybe pawn to g3 to try and patch up that f4 square. But black is still going to bring the rook to d8 and all the rest of it and get the bishop out. White played h4, yeah. And now he is going to be duly punished. Bishop f5.
Interesting. Okay. I was looking at bishop e6 or rook b4, but without any reasoning yet.
Can I just say, Rook B4 looks like a natural sensible. I think you have been, oh, no, it's been lovely having you along here on my journey.
But now it's over, or
Maybe it's your journey. Hang on. Whose journey is it? So the fact is, Rook
our?
B4. The Rook B4 looks like quite a nice, sensible move, I have to say. Bishop to E6, absolutely fine. But Black played Bishop F5 in this game because A, it brings options to get rid of this knight, and B, it's eyeing up this C2 square for should that knight move away.
That is nice indeed.
And the main thing though is both of them have in common the fact that the bishop moves, which means when Rook D8 comes, it's adequately protected on
important.
D8. So I really like that. And in fact, oh wow, let's just show you something which I think you might find absolutely. And this is going to blow your mind. Actually, I know even I was, slightly surprised, minimally surprised, but
which means a lot for you then,
right?
Because
so
nothing can surprise you.
So here, White played Bishop C4, developing a bishop, probably quite prudent. But had they played G4 and said, "Where do you think you're going with that bishop?" Right? Are you going to take Arnold's advice and go back to E6 like you should have done in the first place, or are you going to do something else with it? Well, look at this: bishop takes E4. So I think probably White can't really take with the pawn because then there's going to be a big check on F4. But taking with the queen, and now pause your video for now. Well, not you, Arnold.
Everybody sit down.
You could just freeze.
Freeze. Take a sip of water.
Yeah.
Maybe call your family. Tell them something nice. Tell them that you love them or something if you do. Because this move.
Okay. So here we go. And have you got any? Can you guess what we're going to do here?
Queen H2. Well, I think this would really blow my mind. I don't think it's a very good move, though.
Queen H2. That's giving away the queen. It's a good job that Queen H2. So it's good that you're looking both directions. That's all I can say.
Now let's for real. It almost looks as if Knight C3. There is some magic going on. I don't know. Knight C3, Queen A5. That's how far I got. But maybe it's crazy.
I think that's sort of that's an interesting idea. I'm going to show you. Look at this.
Please. Oh my God! Yes.
I mean, you could say, how is that possible? You've not even got any other pieces in White's half of the board. But let's see. King takes B2, Rook B8 check, and now the king is in a bit of a pickle.
Yeah.
Where's it going to go? It can't really go. Well, it can't go straight forward. That's illegal. It can't go to C3. That's illegal. A3, Queen A5 is a disaster. So it's got to go back to either C1 or A1. Yeah. Okay. So the point is, though, after King C1, Knight C3, we've got a fork. And what a knight. Oh, my word. Have you seen a knight that has done more than this in its entire lifetime?
No, this is the most damaging knight I've ever seen in my whole life.
Basically, we're attacking
the queen's got to knight.
And then we've got Rook B1 check to pick up that knight, that rook on the rook on D1, free of charge. I mean, not even giving up the knight for it. And if the king goes into the corner, King A1, then look at this. This is even neater. Knight C3. The queen's got to move to protect it. We'll have that rook, thank you. And then finally, the king is in the corner of the board. Total disaster.
Wow.
So Rook takes B2, just like that, out of the blue. So instead of playing that, or even H5, White played Bishop C4, which at least means the bishop might offer some sort of cover here. And of course, it's connected the rooks along the back rank. So Black continue with that Rook FB8 plan. And now White needs to start being a little bit nervous about potential discovered attacks against that queen. Well, here White played Knight G5 as if to say, where do you think you're going to go? You can't be moving that knight because there is going to be action on F7. But Black is not too worried about that. What the Black Queen wants to do now is take up a nice post along this diagonal where the queen, the White Queen, currently resides. So what Black played now was the move C5, hitting that White Queen, because you're basically saying, Queen, please go away. Come off of the diagonal that I want to occupy. And of course, there is no way for the white queen to stay along this diagonal towards G7 and H8. All these squares are covered by the black pieces at the moment. So the queen has to go somewhere else. And what's more is if the queen changes diagonals, then just as I mentioned before, we have this check here, which of course is bad news for that bishop.
Game over.
Game over, man. So the queen is pretty much, well, it dropped back to D2, where at least it covers that F4 square.
The queen just had 2 squares, basically. Yeah, it's D2 and G1, and G1 is like also terrible. No, it's only D2. My God. Okay.
Yeah, so in fact, it's only D2 is actually the truth of the matter. Quite right. And black did play queen E5. Right. Now we see the true force. The queen is along here. The rook is along here. The bishop is even eyeing up this diagonal. And you're going to see why we place this bishop on F5 in a couple of moves' time, Anna. Queen E5. So what are you going to do now? The problem is queen takes B2 checkmate is rather a big threat in this particular position. Forget that the knight may or may not be hanging on D5. That's checkmate. That's the end of the game. Queen takes B2. White's got to stop that. Now, if they were to just drop that bishop back to B3 to offer a bit of a shield, then we just... C4 just teases it away and says, thank you very much. That'll be a piece for me, please.
Explosive.
Because you can't take that pawn because it's pinned to the mate on B2. So what's he going to do about that? Well, I think we can all agree that B3 would not be a very adequate solution now because there's a checkmate on A1 as well as 50 billion holes around the king. So what is the only serious alternative?
C3, right?
C3, right. But of course, C3 now opens up this diagonal towards B1. And is that relevant? Oh, my.
Yes, I thought about that. Very nice.
Knight takes C3. Wow, wow, and double wow.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just talk about this. So let's stop just for a second. I don't mean everyone has to stop their videos at this stage, but
maybe
we can see there's
there's
quite a lot happening because the knight in itself is doing things. But of course, we've uncovered this situation here. But on the other hand, there's only one rook protecting at the back rather than 2 rooks. Well, that would mean there'll be 3 rooks, in fact. So you're not often going to have 2 rooks protecting 1 rook. So knight takes C3. So let's just talk about some of the absolute basics here, if we might. So the first thing first is we're obviously attacking the queen. So white can't just take that knight on C3 with their pawn. A, the queen's attacked, and B, there's a certain rook to B1 checkmate, which has entered the equation. On the other hand, if white were to now take on C3 with the queen, it is still going to be checkmate.
Oh, didn't even see that. I just thought of queen F4, but yeah, that is checkmate is a bit more convincing. That's true.
Yeah, checkmate's always handy, always handy. So if, well, what else does white? Yeah, so this is more interesting. Maybe queen takes rook check, rook takes, and king here. But the problem is here, the white king is in an absolute pickle right now. There's a million threats. As you pointed out, again, the check on F4 is huge. There's checks all over the place. And if, for example, pawn to, well, say let's here, queen takes pawn check, the king would have to go to D1. We've got this bishop here, but also A1 would seem to be a rather terminal skewer because black's actually going to be material up with all of white's pieces dropping off or pawns dropping off left, right, and center. Is there anything else in this position? Well, of course, white could take on F7 with their bishop check. That seems perfectly plausible. But is that it's merely delaying things, I think. After king to G7, the only check then would be knight to E6 check. But actually, the problem is now we're just simply winning material now, because if queen takes C3 now, we can swap off queens and we've just won a bishop. So that doesn't really help the general situation. So what did happen? Well, basically, white now played knight takes F7 because that attacks our own queen. Ooh. And it would be with check, of course. So that would be knight takes E5 check. But let's see. Is that the end of the tactics? Oh no, it certainly isn't the end of the tactics.
It's just the beginning.
It's just the beginning. Just the beginning. Knight to e2 check. Now, oh my word. What is that move all about? Well, basically, there's only two legal moves to escape the check here. One of them is to take it with the bishop. But then we can take the queen. Rook takes d2. The knight can take our queen. And now look, a bit of jiggery pokery going on with the rooks on the 7th and 8th rank. Thank you very much. Game over with a bit of a lawnmower with the help of that bishop on f5, kind of protecting that rook on b1. So that would be quite nice in the event of bishop takes e2. Happy about that one, Anna?
Beautiful.
So, in fact, White said, oh, no. You are overlooking the fact that I am going to take that knight with my queen and bring my queen off of that file where it's currently attacked. So he played queen takes e2. Well, what are we going to do now? It seems as though we've missed our chance. Well, it doesn't seem that way to me.
But it made it a bit more dramatic for a second, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, what are we going to do now? What do you think the next way forward? Do we think is?
Well, if you ask me, I would again consider playing Queen f4 check.
Queen f4 check. Okay, but he can block it with the rook. Maybe life goes on. Maybe.
But then we take back.
But the bishop is protected by the queen. Oh, you mean go rook takes d2?
Yeah.
You have got one or two ideas. Maybe there's a discovered knight check. I think you may be right, but there's a better move.
But there's some better move.
Oh yeah,
I sense that. Okay.
There is checkmate in 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, please check out. Get your families again. Gather around. There's a checkmate in 2 here. Okay. Oh, now I see it.
Oh, now.
But is it really checkmate in 2? I think no, I didn't see it yet. Well, I thought about queen c3 check. But oh yeah, well, it is actually working. Yeah.
It is actually working because there's only 2 ways to get out of check.
Silly me.
One of them is to block it with the queen, which would allow queen takes queen mate, and the other with the pawn. Rook to b1. End of the game. Thank you very much. What do you think about that one?
Very cute.
That is very cute. So there we have it. A nice, short and sweet game.
Absolutely.
I have to say, I quite like that game.
And me too. And the lesson is, if you play knight to e4, you might regret it. As a white player.
I think you can say that about pretty much any move on a game.
That is also true. Everybody.
I think the idea is probably knight e4, allowing that bishop to the dragon bishop. Don't underestimate that dragon bishop. Probably white needs to go bishop d4, provoking e5 before that knight comes into e4 a little bit later. So that's probably, yeah. So I don't know. I think rather than mixing their move orders or getting confused, I do believe white deliberately played that, but unfortunately it did not work out for them.
Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Chris, for showing us those beautiful examples over and over again. Can't wait to the next episode.
My pleasure. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.